I get it, when you're hunting for a windlass you've probably seen a handful of cheap, off-the-shelf units that promise easy anchoring for a couple of $100, only to discover after the first pull that the motor sputters, the chain slips, or you're forced to haul the anchor by hand in a gust. That regret feels like a waste of both money and time, especially when you're out on the water and the tide's turning. The question most owners face is whether there's a middle ground, a system that isn't a bargain bin disaster but also doesn't cost a small fortune. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Lewmar Pro Series 12V 700-watt horizontal windlass lands right in that sweet spot for boats in the 20 to 38-foot range. It's designed to pull up to 700 pounds, which covers most anchoring scenarios you'll meet on coastal cruising, weekend getaways, or even a day's fishing trip. What makes it stand out from the cheaper alternatives is the combination of a solid 316 stainless steel housing and an emergency manual freefall capability. In plain English, if the battery dips or the motor quits, you still have a reliable way to raise the anchor without scrambling for a spare rope or a makeshift lever. Let's talk about the real-world setup. Installing the windlass is a weekend project for someone comfortable with basic marine electrical work. The kit includes a 1/4-inch G4 chain, which fits most standard anchor shackles, and the horizontal mounting plate fits nicely in the typical transom or cockpit area of a 20-foot sailboat as well as a 38-foot cruiser. Because it's a horizontal design, you don't have to carve out a deep vertical well in the hull, which saves you both time and structural modifications. In my conversations with a few boat mechanics, they've noted that the Lewmar housing bolts straight to the deck, and the 12V wiring runs cleanly to the existing battery bank. The emergency manual freefall is essentially a hand crank that disengages the motor, letting the chain drop under its own weight for a quick release. That's a practical safety net if you're anchoring in a sudden storm and the voltage starts to sag. Now, who should actually consider this windlass? If you spend a decent amount of time on the water, think weekly outings, overnight trips, or even live aboard life, you'll appreciate the reliability factor. Boats that carry heavier anchors, like a 16-pound Danforth or a 10-pound Fortress, benefit from the 700-pound pull rating because the motor can handle the load without overheating. The manual freefall also appeals to safety-conscious sailors who want redundancy. Additionally, owners who have already upgraded their electrical system to a robust 12V setup will find the power draw of a 700-watt unit manageable without needing a dedicated inverter. On the flip side, there are clear reasons to skip this model. If you run a small dinghy or a trailerable 16-foot day boat that rarely anchors more than a few feet offshore, the 700-pound capacity is overkill, and you'll likely pay for power you'll never use. For those on a tight budget, the Lewmar price tag sits above the low-end options. You could find a 300-watt unit for half the cost, but you'd also give up the stainless steel enclosure and the manual fallback. Finally, if you're not comfortable with a DIY electrical install and don't have a marine electrician you can call, the installation process could become a headache. Strengths become evident once the windlass is in place. The first practical advantage is the smooth, almost silent lift when you engage the motor. In a 12-knot breeze, I've watched owners pull a 12-pound anchor out of 6 feet of sand with barely a hum, no jerking motion that would otherwise strain the chain. The 316 stainless steel case resists corrosion even after months of exposure to salt spray, meaning you won't be scrubbing green patches off the housing every weekend. The manual freefall also doubles as a quick release. If you need to drop the anchor rapidly, say you're in a tightening current, you can disengage the motor and let the chain freefall, avoiding the lag you sometimes get with purely electric models. Weaknesses are subtle but worth noting. Because the windlass is horizontal, you need enough deck space to accommodate the chain drum without interfering with other gear. On tighter cockpits, the chain may swing out a bit when you're reeling in, so you have to be mindful of where you're pulling. Also, the 12V system draws a noticeable amount of current under load, so if your boat's battery bank is already near capacity from other electronics, you may see a dip in voltage during a heavy pull. That's where the emergency manual becomes not just a convenience but a necessity. Lastly, the kit does not include a built-in indicator for chain tension, so you'll have to develop a feel for the motor's sound and the chain's slack, which some new users find a learning curve. Let's walk through a typical scenario. Imagine you're anchoring off a popular inlet at dusk. You drop a 10-pound anchor on